Thank you very much. The Polish poet Czesław Miłosz wrote, "Poetry is a dividend from what you know and what you are." So I'm going to tell you something you already know. Anne is a powerhouse, a force for good in the world where cynicism and doubt abound. She's collegiate, kind and considerate of her fellow poets and artists, wherever they might live. And you just have to look at her social media. Her reach and her conversations are global. She celebrates our successes and she commiserates when we miss. And that's a rare thing and something to be cherished. Thankfully, Anne's accomplishments and achievements have not changed her. She is too steady and noble a character to have her head turned by that. And just before I arrived, I had a message from Michelle D'Souza, who's an editor in a journal in Australia, who said that she wanted to have my comments, but most importantly, she said that Anne was so kind to Australian poets and especially to marginalised poets in Australia. It was just, she said really lovely things. The poems in Out of Emptied Cups and second collection with Salmon Poetry make the unseen appear. Whether it is beloved family members long gone, souls transitioning between this world and their next incarnation, or monsters. Monsters who are ever denied a hiding place in a Casey poem. In many of Anne's poems, tragedy and joy collide, and it is in this collision that move her poems forward, one to action, which nudges us towards conscience, ecological consciousness and self-awareness, and two, discovery, that which incites in us the wish to live well. And just like a cinematographer uses the camera to create a visual aesthetic, she does that with language in her poems. In her poem Out of 1,000 Cups, the first poem in the collection, Anne employs a filmic pan to show us the ascent of a soul before its turnaround and return to re-emerge in a different form. And the effect is featherlight. Featherlight, that touch is just astounding. She uses the same technique in All Souls, the final poem in the collection, shifting between the noises, sights and sounds of Australia and those desperately poignant images of her mother, delivered of a terminal diagnosis and yearning for her child. And with this is twinned the iconography of a suffocating religious presence that's associated with home and with Ireland. And all of this is in contrast to the openness and natural exuberance of her adopted homeland, where rainbow lorikeets will soup, lifting our hearts out of empty cups and away with them into the heavens. A suggestion that Australia is the land where Anne may live out her days. I'm helm on a lifeboat, and when I'm editing, I go out, do the rescue, take the footage off the A-frame, and when I'm editing, I'm careful to place the transitions in the account of the call out of the shout, in such a way that I create a story, and there's everything at stake, just like poetry, everything is at stake, and the transitions are the blink, and you're in a different scene, blink, and you're in a different scene. And Anne uses this filmic technique to masterful effect in her poems, and especially in the poem If I Were to Tell You, as she transitions scene to scene and person to person central to her life. The second verse is a heart stopper and illustrates how, in describing the personal, that moment of wanting to speak to a parent and remembering that they have died, and depicts a universal moment of grief. And I was brought back after my own dad died, and everybody said, he's around, he's close, you know, he's there and he's minding you. And I was driving home from my parents' house just to collect clothes and go back, and I just shouted, "Dad!" And I drove along, and the silence back was desperate. So when I read Anne's poem, it really, you know, kind of, it was like a punch in the solar plexus, because it brought me back to that moment. This collection includes poems that were once mysterious and captivating. Wildness is my personal favourite, and though the wild creature is never named, and that restraint adds power to the poem, Anne draws on the notion of woman as shapeshifter, or selkie, or woman hair that's linked to the other world, central to Irish folklore, as she, and even the concept of doppelganger. And at another level, the poem is about woman denying her true nature, suppressing her instincts. Quote, "And I will curl up, wrap myself in your shed skin, and marvel at its length, its strength, its tenderness, all that held you back, your wildness denied." This haunting poem encapsulates one of the central themes in Out of Emptied Cups, that of a woman navigating an often unforgiving world, but ultimately recovering self and strength through family and history, by loving and being loved. If poetry is the closest art we have to silence, Anne's poems frame the silences. She is fearless in observing what can and should be named and what should remain unnamed. The American poet Jane Hirshfield has said that one of the laws of poetry seems to be that there can be no good poem of an unalloyed happiness, that good poems always pull in two directions. And this is certainly what Anne achieves in her book, that sudden shift, that collision, achieved purely by precision of words. It's just a real wordsmith. A wonderful example of this and of an exquisite employment of visual metaphor is offered in Anne's poem, "Thank You for Shopping With Us," a remonstration that our eco-destruction will literally cost us this earth. This collection is one of vitality and rhythm. It uses the music of words to make silence felt and leaves the reader with a glad recognition that there is so much more to poetry than just meaning alone. The book is published by Salmon Poetry, and Jessie and Siobhan are just their Trojans. They lead the way, they recognise talent, and they just do a great job. I'm huge admiration. And all you have to do is just look at the list and see the poets that they publish, and it's there, the affirmation is in that. I'm going to finish with a quote by Czesław Miłosz again. He says that poets today can form a confraternitas, transcending distances and language. That poets today can form a community, can I say that? That poets today can form a community transcending distances and language differences, may be one of the few encouraging signs in the current chaotic world. He said that in 1996, and that applies to Anne. If you look around you, she's just constantly supporting and advocating for other poets. When a lot of poets go down to the sea at Doolin and dip their bags, which are made of old paper, in the sea, and then clout each other across the chops with it. Anna's not doing that. She's a generous, gifted poet, and it's a joy to know her. Congratulations, Anne, and I wish you every success.